Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about racial integration or assimilation, or call it what you like, but the situation where people from racial groups, people from very different situations, behavior, attitudes, religion, and so on, genetic diasporas and so on, are brought together in one place. And how do you sort of integrate, assimilate, manage? Is multiculturalism a better option than not? Is there a natural organic tendency over the years and the centuries for people to integrate? And what are the consequences of not integrating, not assimilating, of not getting everyone at the very least to share the same values? And talking about values across the board, not simply, well, how about we all agree not to run around murdering folks? I don't just mean that, but to again have the same. Now we can reflect this in what could be generically called social trust. Societies that are homogenous tend to have higher levels of social trust than those that are not. Wherever controls are being imposed on people without their agreement or consent, then there's a breakdown of trust between the governed and those doing the governing. So we can look at this in a multidimensional sense, but how is it to be managed? Now, the globalists have forced upon us in the West, without our consent, without our agreement, without us wanting it, they've forced it upon us, brutally done so. And if we don't like it, they'll destroy us financially or even put us in prison. And look what they're doing in England and so on at the moment. But the question isn't going to go away, nor will the problem disappear by screaming at people, calling them Nazis or putting them in prison. That won't solve anything. The problem still remains. Now, we can say that the multiculturalism experiment has been an unmitigated disaster for the West. It's lowered our standard of living. It's driven the cost of living up through the roof, or has run cover for those who would do that. But I want to look at the personal, sort of the human on the street side of it. And there was a young Hispanic Latina woman, college kid, who's being interviewed that I saw. Now she's as I understand it, either the grandchild or great grandchild of the immigrants who came from Mexico, 100 years ago, whenever it was. And she, when she talks about things, she talks about my people, the Mexicans. My country is Mexico. When I speak in my language, which is Spanish Mexican or Mexican Spanish, and my people, my country, my language, it's all Mexico, Mexico, Mexico. Now, she's been, 2 or 3 generations US born, but still talks that way. And she still has the entitlement attitude of an immigrant that's just walked across the border 5 minutes ago. In fact, you would think she had, the way she talks. Now, while she infers that America is full of fascist Nazi Hitlers and white supremacists, and she's a victim being kept down and get back somehow, she's studying some bullshit sociology course at university. So how oppressed she can be is hard to say. But she, her view is that she and people like her poor people have every right to leave the countries they're in. And she readily concedes that Mexico is a basket case, that it's corrupt. She says, we can't, in Mexico, we can't get clean water to drink. We can't get clean food to eat. We can't access medical care. The public services just don't exist. You can't get public transport. Everyone's trying to rip you off and extort money from you. there's banditos running around stealing shit from, and so on and so forth. So she's saying, hey, Mexico is a basket case, and we have every right, Mexicans have every right to leave Mexico and to find a better life. And you Americans, you don't know what it's like to not be able to access clean drinking water. Okay, all right, then let's just, why don't you go to another South American country though? Well, they're all poor as well, so I don't want to go there. We want to go to a rich country, and it's a white country that just happens to be full of Nazis and terrible country. All right, then why would you come to a terrible place that's full of Nazis? Well, because you guys do have public service, you do have clean drinking water, you do have clean food, you do have medical care, you have all the things I want. All the things I want that I wish Mexico had, all the things I want you have in America. So I have the right to come to America, through whatever means, illegally or whatever. So it comes then to the issue of illegal. No, I want a better life. This America offers a better life, therefore I have a right to come. And then it switches into the Marxist argument. But you guys in America, in the West, you have so much. You have so much. Why won't you share it with us? You fucking fascist Hitler Nazis, why won't you share this with us? You have the resources, why won't you share it? Now, this is a very Marxist view. Third world people tend to have this attitude that if you have, if the village has, whatever the village has, you must share. And it's not Marxist necessarily, but it's been, say, practiced in Pacific Islander groups, Africa, and all sorts of things like that. What the village has, it shares. And there's no concept of private ownership in the same way as the Western capitalist economies developed. Now, you see the same attitude from Indians as well, people from India or Pakistan or so on. They say their countries are corrupt, diabolical, hopeless basket cases. And that's why they want to come to the West for a better life. But in no cases, as the same with this Latino woman, 3 generations down the pike, she still claims to be, I'm Mexican from the basket case. Well, you've just derided Mexico as an absolute diabolical basket case, and yet you don't want to be American. Why not? Oh, well, and you could go into things. Well, hey, I can't claim victim status if I claim to be an American, so it suits me to kind of play the Latino card. So there's all sorts of stuff like that going on here as well. And so it's not a simple one size fits all push button here, and we understand it. It's a bit more complicated when you throw modern wokeism and victim ideology into the mix. But Indians and why I'm against Indian immigration is that 5-6 generations down the track, 7 generations down the track, they still don't assimilate. They're still sending back to the village of their ancestors for husbands and brides and so on. So how do we deal with this idea of mass immigration? Let's assume we can't stop the mass immigration for the moment. I mean, I'll come back to that in a minute. Remember, it's been forced upon us without our agreement or consent. But how do we look at mass immigration in terms of assimilation, integration? Now, on one side, you can have multiculturalism. So you've got the Indian enclave here, and there are whole suburbs of Sydney that are just Indian. Like you walk down the street, you'd be lucky to see anyone that isn't Indian. I don't know how they're able to do that, but they are. There are others where you'll find, there's one suburb in Sydney that's made up almost exclusively of South African Jews. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. But just on the basis of when you come to another country, do you want to be part of that country's society, or do you want to create a special racial, ideological enclave in that country? Now, if you're just visiting for a short while, or something like you're, say, a student or something like that, who cares? But if you're coming to, no, I want to leave my country because it's a stuffed up basket case, and I want to come to this country. Now, the people that want to come only want the money. They only want the better life, as in, look at all the riches these people have. I want to go there so I can have some of it, so I can take some of it. And that's very much the attitude. Do I want to assimilate or integrate? No. Well, you idiot. Well, what makes you think I want to do that? So in spite of the young woman running Mexico down as corrupt, you can't get clean drinking water, it's a disaster all around. In spite of that, she still holds the view that Mexico is culturally and spiritually superior to the West, to America. America's got the money, but has no spirituality, has no culture, it has nothing, but it has the money. So I come here for the money, not for the spirituality, not for the culture or anything else. Now that means that person's already decided, hey, I don't want to integrate here. I just want to take your fucking money. That's all I'm here for. And that's the sort of migrant that you don't really want. Again, unless they're short term. Maybe they're going to work for 2 or 3 years designing the next rocket to the moon or Mars or wherever. Maybe that's fine. They're on a short term work permit. Who cares what they believe or don't believe culturally? But if they come to America or to the West, could be Britain, Australia, wherever, come to live, then they come to be part of that society. So it's incumbent on the society to select those most likely to become Australians or Americans, or become Australians within 1-2 generations max. Now, 3 generations down the pike, this is, I'm Mexican. 5 generations on, 6 generations, now I'm Indian, then you've got the wrong people. You just picked the wrong people. So assimilation, integration is fine. I think I don't think multiculturalism works at all. I think those enclaves demand, and in the days of wokeism, get special dispensations, special handouts, special gifts, special patronage, and all sorts of things that ruin it for all of us. The society, work, the workplace, everything becomes less efficient, less effective, less focused, more diluted, and so less and less gets achieved at greater and greater cost to us all through tax and through degradation of I mean, look at, say, in the case of the fires in LA, a lot of that failure there was a failure of people who just aren't qualified to be in those jobs, affirmative action, diversity, and so on. But there was a lot of unqualified people in decision-making positions, and they were only concerned about the vainglorious nature of only straight white males used to this job, but now we've got black lesbians. Look how far we've come as a society. And those sort of idiotic, fantasy, delusional type takes on things. Coming back now to the picking of, or the selecting of migrants. Now, I know a lot of Indians, which is because I know intimately. And again, I've travelled the world many times over doing business. So I've probably got a better front row seat than a lot of people do. But with Indians, it's very important to them that they can bring their cultural habits with them. Very important to them. Now, if you say to an Indian immigrant, okay, well, you won't be able to send back to the village of your ancestors for husbands or brides, neither you or your descendants, you won't be able to do that. You must, if you're going to marry, you must marry a locally born person, and that person could be Indian, that's fine, but you must marry a locally born person. You cannot have a child arranged marriage through Indian matchmakers in the village match. Can't do it. And once you come to Australia, you can only have one visit every 5 years to India, or every 10 years. And if you try and send any money back to your relatives in India, it will be taxed at 90%, and so on. So you're coming to Australia to be an Australian. Or an American, or whatever it might, Canadian, so that you're coming to integrate into this society, to be part of this society and this culture and this set of social values and so on. Now, the Indian, certainly every single Indian I know would go, no. Well, in that case, I'm not going to be an immigrant to Australia. I want to bring my cultural and spiritual behaviours and habits and customs with me. I don't want to integrate in your society. Fine, there's no problem with that. That's your choice, and no problem. Now, the same would apply to Pakistanis or Bangladeshis. No, you can't marry your cousins or You can't do it. You can't send back for husbands and brides. They wouldn't come. It's essential to them that they bring their cultural habits with them. Now, the same goes for most. I can't think of any exceptions, actually. Every Middle Eastern person I know, like from Lebanon or the Middle East, no, not everyone. There are a couple of exceptions here, but pretty much everyone. They all marry other Arabic people, and many send back to the village again, the Middle East village of their ancestors, husbands and brides, and this is a widespread thing. Now, again, if you said that to people coming, hey, you can't bring your cultural habits with you, and that's a very, very important one. Sending back to the village of the ancestors, husbands and brides, because they want to keep the culture pure. They want to keep and you look at the people who are involved in Islamic people who are involved in how can I phrase this tamely, in antisocial behaviours. They all have that very tight connection with in terms of husbands and brides, and like that close connection, tight connection with the village and the land and the place of their ancestors. To the Indians and to the Arabs and so on, keeping your culture pure, keeping your behaviour and the diaspora genetically and culturally pure is very important to them. And if they can't transplant it, then they simply won't come. So that would be an easy way of preventing a lot of people from coming to the West that don't want to integrate. Now, the illegality aside, this assumes legal. Now, the same goes for the Mexican girl. Her parents married Mexicans. Again, bringing someone in from Mexico to marry. So they're determined to keep that. Would they have stayed in the US or even come to the United States if they weren't permitted to do that? Now, there's a difference in integration to say coming to Australia or to any America, Canada. Say a British person coming from Australia coming from Britain to Australia. Now, if if you look at the straight sort of mathematics and arithmetic of it, if they arrive before they're say 10 years old, under 10 years old, this is a child coming with their parents. If they arrive before they're 10 years old, then they'll become Australian in the first. They will become Australians or Americans. If they arrive, say past high school age, they're maybe 17 or 18 or something like that. If they arrive past high school age, they probably won't. And so it would take two generations. Their children will be Australian. Now, why do I say it? Well, if they're Indigenous, assuming they're Indigenous to Britain, as in historically Indigenous, then if they come to Australia, then they're going to be white. So that would be they're going to be, all balance of probability Christian. The same laws and government and social interactions, same level of social trust, all these things are very, very similar. So to switch from one society to another, sure, there'll be differences. Weather, like from Britain to Australia, outdoor barbecues are far more prevalent. They would be in cold, rainy Britain. But those sort of things are hardly core to the behaviour of the individual, their customs, habits, and attitudes, views, religions, and so on. They're a slight adjustment of behaviour based on things like climate. So anyway, this is the integration rate is very high. Not perfect, but it's very high. Now, once you bring someone from a place like India, then the integration rate, assimilation rate is very low. They have a very different way of looking at the world, very different behaviour, very different cuisine, religious habits, cultural habits, who they marry and how the family interact. For example, if an Indian girl that's from an Indian family that's born in Australia and she wants to date a Anglo-Saxon white guy, then she'll come under huge pressure from the family to not do that. If the relationship blossoms and she says she's going to marry the white guy, the entire wider family, cousins, aunts, uncles, the whole 9 yards, they'll threaten her with she'll be outcast from the family, she'll be disinherited, and so on. So she'll come under withering pressure where she has to marry an arranged marriage woman from a man from India. So, these are again behavioural differences. Not that these things don't happen in the West, amongst white people, but they don't happen in the same way. The same threats of excommunication aren't there. So a lot of things could be done in the selection process, but there's not a single Indian I know that would have come to Australia if they'd been denied the right for them or their children to select a husband or bride from the village of the ancestors. Same for the entire subcontinent, by the way. Now, when we look at integration in terms of racial integration, as I've mentioned a number of times before, I go to all over, do a lot of travelling around Sydney in Australia, and I just don't see it. If there's more than one, I mean, I'll be generous in the extreme and say if there's more than 2% integration, even at boyfriend-girlfriend level, this doesn't include marriage, but even if there's 1 or 2%, then that would be it. Again, people who the first sort of tranche of migrants in large numbers that came to Australia, they're now in their early to mid 20s or even late 20s now, and the integration rate there again is 1 or 2%, if that. So, and in spite of wall-to-wall advertising, promoting and talking about multiracial, all the adverts on TV, all the billboards and the magazines and the TV programs and movies and so on, you'd think that there wasn't that every relationship involved a mixed race couple, but you don't see it on the street. It just isn't there. So whatever integration or assimilation practices that are being put forward are that are being pushed around, that they're simply not working. I mean, you'd have to rate them as astonishing failures. And if you get grandchildren or great-grandchildren saying that they, hey, my country, Mexico, my language, Spanish, Mexican, my people, that sort of thing, and they're second generation US born, then you know that integration has been a monumental failure. I don't think multiculturalism can ever work unless you give the bulk of resources to the indigenous people, but through law or edict. But as long as the wokeism exists in parallel with multiculturalism, then it's guaranteed to denigrate, destroy, undermine, tear apart the entire productive fabric of the Western economies and their ability to create wealth and efficiently and productively direct it. You've been at Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.